showing how MySQL Workbench works. Now, this tool keeps getting updated quite a bit. And the latest version that you see, download, may not look exactly the same as the one that I have over here. But once you get this working, you can create a new model. And this is where you create the database schemas, the ERD. So go ahead and click on a new model. And again, the interface may be a little bit different based on your operating system and based on what you have done. But this is where you can go and create a diagram. It's a beautiful place where you can create multiple tables. This is where you can create tables, and these are some of the connections that you can make. And you will learn more about these connections later on as you level up. So here, let me just create a cabinet or a table called, what should we call this? Should we call it customers? Because that's the example that I gave. So if you want to create a field called customers, and then go in and do that, and then I'm going to create an ID. All the primary records, you almost want to give it almost always a unique ID that auto increment. So go in and check that. That AI basically means auto increment. It doesn't mean artificial intelligence. So here you can also store, let's say, name, and there are many options that you can choose from. Varchar, int, most of these others, don't worry about it. You can read a little bit documentation about it, but the one that you will use mostly are varchar. That basically means I'm going to store up to, let's say, 255 characters. And let's say I want to store email, which is 255 characters. And then you want to store, let's say, we talked about hobbies, right? And hobbies, let's say 255 is not enough. Then you want to do text. And this is a little bit clunky, but you have to eliminate this parentheses, and then it saves it. And then let's do something else. We talked about description, and I want to have it be text. Let me erase the parentheses. And then you want to created at, date time, because you want to know when the records were created, updated at, date time, because you want to know when the records were updated. So let's say I have this customers, and every time customer comes in and places an order, I want to capture that order information. So let's do that. So let's create a table. And you always want to name the table plural. So I'm going to call it orders. And, oh, not this one. Okay, this one. Okay, customers, right? Make sure you click on that one, and then you do orders. And this one, I want to, again, let's create an ID that is automatically incremented. And then maybe here I will store let's say just the amount. So this one, it's not quite an integer. So in this case, you can kind of go down through the list and find what is the appropriate type to store. I think float would work because float will store decimal points. And then let's see, what else would I need to store? Maybe any notes about the order that the customer filled out. So maybe I'll store that in text. Now, we also need to store the customer ID, because if we don't store the customer ID, if we have a bunch of orders and with the amount and notes, well, we don't know who's the one that ordered it, right? So maybe before we go a little bit more, let's just add a little bit more. So like the address, maybe address 255 is fine. I can add the city name, maybe city, 45 names should be enough. State, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 should be enough. And then zip code. Zip code can be an integer, right? And then, you can create created at, which is a date time, and updated at, which is a date time. So whenever you're doing this, just think of the previous video where I demonstrated that you were basically trying to create the record, the template of the record that you're going to insert into the orders cabinet or the customers cabinet. So this is what you do, and you can resize some of these. But now a customer can have many orders, right? So if I want to create that schema, what I do is see this one-to-many. So you do this, and then you kind of do backward. You click on the many, and then you click backward on this. And now it creates the one-to-many relationship. See that? One-to-many relationship. It automatically created this thing called customers underscore ID. I don't like it. It's supposed to be singular. So go ahead and change that back. And then you can also right click and then move up. Uh, Before you used to be able to drag it, but they kind of got rid of that feature. I don't know why. So you have to do this kind of manually. And I personally like to see the primary key. ID is a primary key, and any foreign keys, like the customer ID, just group together at one up on the top so that I can just visualize. Right? That helps me with visualization. So that's what you use ERD for. This is where you play around. And then again, when you do the ERD exercise, it may feel like I don't quite know what's happening. But again, later when you go into the SQL queries, a lot of this will make a lot more sense. Go in and play around with it. And then as you get better and go into SQL, it should make a lot of sense. And now, I don't know why this got changed to customer ID. Let me just change it to updated app because that's what I plan on doing. And then if you want to create another table, just go in and click on it. You can create one-to-many relationship, even many-to-many relationship doing this. But whenever you do this, make sure that you check the foreign key and change the name so that it's singular underscore ID. And you will see later on why following some of these conventions will make it easier later when you level up and learn how to create complex web application.